Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's presentation on prevention of substance abuse. Throughout this PowerPoint, we'll be investigating the effectiveness of substance abuse prevention programs and decreasing substance abuse in teens and young adults. In addition, the topics that we will cover include identifying what are prevention programs, principles of substance abuse prevention, goals and objectives of these programs, how these programs change patterns of substance abuse, and their current progress in Canada.
What are prevention programs? Substance abuse prevention programs are programs that have been designed to help prevent the harmful use of drugs. These programs are made up of two factors, which are the protective factors and the risk factors. The protective factors are used to help reduce the usage of drugs, while risk factors are factors that increase the usage of drugs. Certain common risk factors are negative peer associations, exclusion, low self-worth, youth violence, delinquency, school dropout, abusive parenting, and many more. Research has shown that children that experience any of those risk factors have a high likely chance to turn to drug abuse. Prevention programs aim to enforce and enhance protective factors that at an early start to help reduce the risk factors and prevent youths from dangerously consuming drugs later on. How were prevention programs first created? The first sign of substance abuse prevention programs occurred in the 1980s and the 1990s. They were mostly implemented in schools, but as the programs progressed, more knowledge and understanding was gathered on the epidemiology of substance abuse. These programs also began to understand how certain age groups are associated with certain drugs and how it connects with changes in behavior. Eventually, they began to obtain effective findings on the evaluation and elements used by these substance abuse prevention interventions. This began to create a framework that allowed development of more and newer prevention programs to be created.
For the prevention of substance abuse, there are several characteristics that prevention practitioners must address. The National Institute on Drug Abuse outlined principles for prevention practitioners to follow. The Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration also developed prevention principles. They are both very similar as they are focused on prevention programs or services. The principles that they address are aimed to make prevention programs effective, and they share this information to professionals, parents, and community leaders. The principles are based on research done to understand the nature of substance use and abuse. The characteristics from the National Institute on Drug Abuse and the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration are similar, but composed of different information. The principles address ways to make prevention programs and services effective, but the specific principles are different between the two. Our textbook references the National Institute on Drug Abuse when it discusses the principles of prevention. There are three main domains that they discuss. The first is risk factors and preventive factors. This domain addresses how prevention programs should enhance protective factors and reduce risk factors. Prevention programs should address all forms and types of drug abuse and drug abuse problems, and the risk it has to the population. The second domain is prevention program planning. This domain contains three different types of programs within it. Family-based programs focus on the relationship and family bonding experiences between the parents and the child. School programs discuss prevention at the earliest moment by addressing the risk factors of drug abuse. It also includes improving academics, social-emotional learning, and social competence. Community programs involve general populations like transitioning to middle school and the combination of two or more programs. The final domain is prevention program delivery. This domain contains the most principles within it. It addresses the implementation of prevention programs to the community and school-based programs. Prevention programs should be long-term with follow-up programs, proper training for teachers, and have interactive techniques. The principles of substance abuse prevention from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration have similar domains from the NIDA. The individual domain, family domain, peer domain, school domain, community domain, and the society/environmental domain. Each domain contains several principles much like before. The individual domain addresses interventions designed to change knowledge and attitudes to the substance abuse. The family domain addresses the risk factors involved in poor family practices. The interventions are aimed at the whole family by increasing family bonding and parenting skills. The peer domain also recognizes the risk factors involved in peer use and norms. Interventions aim at building social and personal skills, involving youth in alternative programs or peer-led interventions. The school domain, much like the school domain from the NIDA, focuses on knowledge-based interventions. It aims at involving peer-led interventions, helping students practice new skills interactively, and involve parents. The principles within the community domain involve integrating comprehensive prevention strategies rather than one-time events. The risk factors in this domain include a lack of bonding, community awareness, or acknowledgement of substance use, among others. Community institutions can give the opportunity to develop interactions with pro-social peers. The final domain, society/environmental domain, contains the most principles once again. The principles within this domain focus on changes both individually and systems or environments that promote or hinder substance abuse. The risk factors include norms tolerant of use and abuse, policies of use and abuse, lack of enforcement, and inappropriate negative sanctions for use and abuse.
The Outreach Worker Service goals are made to improve not only students, but also families, schools, and communities in improving their quality of life. This reflects their first goal of improving the well-being of youth, schools, and communities, which can be done by increasing youth's developmental assets to prevent or minimize the problematic use of alcohol and other drugs and substances and related mental health concerns. This is done through building therapeutic relationships, asset development and application, education, and community development. The second goal is to be part of the culture of the school by connecting with youth, families, the school, and broader community. This includes community development and recognizing that communities within the Outreach Worker Service are at different stages of engagement. The first objective of the Outreach Worker Service is to build therapeutic relationships. This can be done by engaging at-risk students through an orientation led by the outreach worker and by supporting the counseling of at-risk students by engaging caregivers when relevant. The second objective includes applying the appropriate therapeutic tools which will work to increase student well-being. The third objective involves recognizing client needs and determining appropriate referral services as necessary. The fourth objective includes the use of experiential learning, which provides clients with opportunities to apply and practice life skills. The fifth objective is to educate the community on promoting student health. Education is an important factor in prevention programs as it provides the necessary information to clients to improve their well-being. Finally, the last objective involves supporting community opportunities for access to and growth of services by promoting connectedness and well-being. The textbook references Canada's Drug and Substance Strategy, also known as CDSS, which is an evaluation of prevention, treatment, and enforcement related to illicit drug use. The campaign was launched in 2008 and provided specific goals and objectives that work to prevent and to treat drug use. These goals include refocusing existing community-based drug use prevention strategies, programs, and services for youth, provide information to parents, educators, and health professionals, develop ideas for school-based awareness, including prevention strategies for elementary and secondary school students, also using public awareness campaigns and news to prevent drug use. Finally, they work to provide financial aid to communities and works to create local projects that hinder illicit drug use among young individuals. In relation to the Outreach Worker Service goals and objectives stated previously, Canada's Drug and Substance Strategy is focused on community development by focusing their work towards youth, schools, family, and the community. This campaign also emphasizes the importance of education by preventing the growing area of drug use through public awareness and news outlets. One area where this campaign differs from the outreach worker services goals and objectives is that they work to provide financial aid to communities for local projects in hopes to prevent drug use.
Before we begin our discussion on patterns of substance abuse and how prevention programs utilize these patterns, a discussion question that I want you to think about is from what you have studied so far in the textbook, and what do you think are some patterns of substance abuse, and how may it contribute to the prevention of abuse? Before we move on, take a few seconds to think about this question, and in the preceding slides, we will answer this question in more detail. Now, let's watch a video that gives a brief introduction to the patterns of substance abuse in Canada by Teresa Tam.
Hello, I'm Dr. Teresa Tam, the Chief Public Health Officer of Canada. My annual report this year is a snapshot of our health status as a nation with a special focus on the prevention of problematic substance use among youth. In terms of our health status, we generally live long and healthy lives in Canada. Compared to other high-income countries, Canada ranks among the healthiest. That said, I do remain concerned about the influence of persistent health inequalities. That is, the gap in the health status between various populations. You see in the report that chronic and infectious diseases, mental health and health inequalities are important issues. But I'm especially concerned about problematic substance use among youth. There have been over 8,000 opioid-related deaths in Canada since 2016. This is tragic and unacceptable. Also, high rates of problematic alcohol consumption are leading to a wide range of harms. A quarter of youth in grades 7 to 12 use alcohol excessively. I am also keenly aware that changes to the legal status of cannabis underscore the need to help our youth understand that legal does not mean safe. This is a key moment in Canada to examine and strengthen our response across all areas of potential action, including prevention, harm reduction, treatment, and recovery. We have to act now to reverse some of these current trends for future generations. This will require collaboration among many partners to work together to encourage healthy behaviors and tackle stigma and discrimination. I hope this report will help to inform your efforts, stimulate discussion, and lead to renewed action to reduce harmful use of substances in Canada.
The most common pattern of substance abuse in teens or young adults is polysubstance and dual substance use, which can be defined as using 2 or 3 substances at a time. The 3 substances most commonly used among adolescents in combination are alcohol, cannabis, and tobacco. However, they are often used in different combinations. For example, a study conducted by Cohn and authors found that teens or young adults were more likely to experiment with marijuana and tobacco when they were intoxicated. The authors believed that it was because being intoxicated allowed individuals to participate in things that they wouldn't normally do, which has contributed to the increase of marijuana use over the years. In addition, another reason for its increase could be due to the change in policies, which has allowed these substances to be more accessible. For instance, in the video that we viewed in the previous slide, Teresa Tam discussed how the legalization of cannabis has created the misconception that the use of this drug is safe, which can increase the purchasing, use, and dosage of this product. In conclusion, individuals who engage in this type of substance use usually begin before the age of 20 and at around the ages of 15 to 17 years old. Individuals who start this pattern early in their life, such as between the ages 11 to 14, are more at risk at developing substance abuse problems as they get older. Additionally, polysubstance use can lead to poor mental health, educational, and social outcomes. And one explanation for this pattern of substance use is that teens or young adults have easy accessibility to these substances, for example, when they go to parties. And during these situations, alcohol is often a common substance. However, the introduction of other substances is often common too, for instance, through friends or mutual friends. Individuals may try alcoholic drinks and other drugs to demonstrate that they're having fun, which may support the fact that peer pressure also plays a strong role in polysubstance use. In the following slide, we will look at how identifying these patterns of substance abuse early can increase the prevention of abuse in teens or young adults, as well as problems faced by these programs in prevention. In our last discussion on patterns of substance abuse, it is apparent that teens or young adults are at high risk of abuse than any other age group. The most common prevention programs that are targeted at this age group are school-based programs, which are based in a knowledge attitudes behavior model, which aims to provide students with knowledge on substance abuse and its effects in hopes that it will bring awareness and change the behavior and attitudes of these individuals. Before we continue, can you think of some pros and cons of this type of program in preventing substance abuse in teens and young adults? Since these types of prevention programs are focused on protective factors, this means that they need to inform individuals on situations where they encounter people who may offer drugs and other substances to them. Similar to our discussion on patterns of substance abuse, these programs can change the pattern of polysubstance or dual substance use through clearly identifying places where drug use is most common, how to get out of these situations, and identifying drugs or substances that are frequently offered. It is essential to avoid using scare tactics and to focus on providing safety measures to adolescents in the most direct and simple manner. For example, since alcohol is often used in combination with marijuana or tobacco, it's most likely that teens or young adults in these situations are at a party. School-based programs can change these patterns by suggesting statements for students to use when they find themselves in a place where they are being offered drugs, such as, "No, I don't use drugs, please don't ask again." This reflects the protective factors which are at the core of these programs. In the next slide, we will talk about some problems and common experiences that are faced by prevention programs. From our previous discussion on school-based programs, it is clear that when applied correctly, identifying the patterns of substance abuse in youth and addressing these through messages in schools can provide strong protective factors for individuals who are vulnerable to substance abuse. However, there are a number of problems that are faced by these programs, and in this discussion, we will discuss these factors in more detail. According to Hook and authors, they found a significant number of problems faced by primary care providers when screening youth for substance abuse. Although these problems are not directly related to our discussion on prevention programs, I believe that can be applied here also. The first problem is that providers do not have enough training to deal with youth who have tested positive for substance abuse. Similarly, school-based programs in the past were held by teachers who were not well equipped in educating teens and young adults on drug and alcohol knowledge. The second is that providers are usually unsure of how to proceed to the next steps when youth are tested positive. Because school-based programs before were filled with ill-equipped teachers, they relied on scare tactics only as prevention methods. The third problem states that providers often report a lack of resources for youth. For example, school-based programs have relied on the knowledge attitudes behavior model and have not looked at other models of prevention. The fourth issue is that providers report insufficient time to spend with each individual during short visits, which prevents them with being familiar with their cases and suggest treatment also. This can be seen in school-based programs as well, because it is often difficult to cover all the possible substances that adolescents will encounter in their life. And oftentimes, the best method is just talk generally about substance abuse, rather than identifying specific drugs or alcohol. The last problem is that faced by providers are the tenacious parents. This means that the presence of parents during the child's session can interfere with whether they disclose necessary information to detect substance abuse. Since school-based programs' messages often depict vivid illustrations of substance abuse, there's often a question on whether parents are also involved in explaining and going over information that's presented to them in school, or if students are reluctant to have this discussion due to the fear of what their parents might say. After a discussion on problems that are faced by prevention programs, Can you think about any additional problems faced by these programs? And how can youth be more aware of substance abuse and be more willing to be more open about this discussion?
A study by the Institution of Medicine, also known as IOM, focuses on the effectiveness and progression of universal substance abuse prevention programs. Local agencies and projects often wish to choose one intervention approach that produces the greatest impact on prevention. One way the Institute of Medicine compares the types of programs is by measuring the scores throughout the IOM classification domains and conveying the findings into standardized scores. The types of programs used for substance prevention are classified into 3 domains. These domains reference to universal, selective, and indicated prevention programs. Universal programs address the needs of all individuals, while selective programs target individuals at elevated risk for the problem, and indicated programs are for those exhibiting the early stages of the problem. Substance abuse prevention program types have generally found selective and indicated programs to be more effective. A selective program, which is known to be effective, references to the National Institute on Drug Use, also known as NIDA. Currently, the NIDA is the leading national organization to help combat substance abuse and addiction. NIDA offers selective prevention programs, which have proven to be effective. This is evident because they obtain more than 200 interventions which can be accessed online internationally. Through their platform, they are able to use the power of science to bring awareness to substance abuse and help prevent it from reoccurring. The programs provide up-to-date information to enhance the effectiveness of each service, directly addressing risk and protective factors related to substance abuse. Their programs also recognize the important role families and adults play in a young adult's life, which help determine how youth handle different substance influences. Therefore, they implemented services to help support families, as well as mentor relationships and provide communication strategies. They also support mental health promotion and work towards educating schools, since patterns of abuse suggest abuse worsens within high school years, hence implementing early intervention programs. There are a variety of methods to improve substance abuse programs. However, some methods reference to updating prevention program strategies, procedures, and information each year, gathering government aid and community donations in order to provide services and fund public service campaigns, as well as work towards reforming healthcare and criminal justice systems to create new opportunities to increase access and treatment services. And lastly, create more prevention programs within marginalized communities as well as educational systems.